introduction. So, as probably some of you know my style, I'm kind of going to go a bit 100 miles an hour, but feel free to ask some questions or raise your hands if you want me to cover some of the topics, right? So, I really like this topic, right? I think is, I didn't write it, but I actually think it's really cool, right? So I'm basically going to embrace. And the things I really like from the description is, enhance customer experience, protect against operation security risks, user satisfaction, resilience, etc., right? And I think they are really, really key topics. So I kind of have two worlds, right, at the moment. I'm the CISO Holland and Barrett. If you probably know from the high street, it's tons and tons and tons of branches. It's also a very interesting company that's in the middle of digital transformation. It's going 100 miles an hour into wellness and healthcare, which brings a huge amount of interesting challenges. I'm also chief scientist of Glasswall, which is a UK startup that makes business file safe, and we work a lot with the governments, etc. So trying to show how my world fits into the digital sort of immune system, right? So at Holland and Barrett, the big vision now is adding why will Holland and Barrett exist? Is adding quality years to life, right? And the big sort of what is we're making health and wellness a way of life for everybody. Now, what's interesting about this is that the how, and this is where when we talk about aligning security with the business strategy, making sure it adds value, for me, the interesting thing about the proposition is that we're aligning 100% security activities with the future of the company. And I think that's very important, right? If we are a business function, we are basically position ourselves in a way that for the business to succeed, for the business to add quality years of life to you, right, and to make sure health and wellness, we have to build that digital immune system. We have to have this digital trust. You have to trust, the brand in order to do that kind of stuff. And then Glasswall is about preventing patient zero first trial protection, but also getting to a known good state, which is one of the topics I think is very important in how we scale security, right? So again, how does the security team align with the objectives? So an interesting way of seeing this is that we are really focusing on supporting the business in the digital transformation, and the digital transformation is really hard, right? I know there's a lot of buzzwords, but it's about changing the whole business to use digital technology, and that brings huge amount of challenges from a security, from a protection, from a data, etc. Now, if we don't embrace that, you risk having parts of the business that runs on spreadsheets, parts of the business that integrate with third-party vendors, part of the business that do all sorts of stuff, and then we'll be on the receiving end of incidents, or that team that basically by a couple of things that we could have prevented helps to destroy the trust that we try to build, right? So on the other hand, we have to empower them. One of the things I always say that I view that my job as a CISO is to allow the business to take risks, right? And this is very hard to do because you start to be accountable to, right? It's very easy to say, don't do this, don't do that, or not sure about that. But it's much harder to say, okay, we can take these risks. And what that means, it means that we know there will be incidents. That's the bottom line. You can't say, this is very dangerous, blah, 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 and then nothing happens. Well, either you got crazy lucky or your measurement was completely off the scale. So I think it's very important that we're very pragmatic. So there's the wellness journey, and in a way to compete in the market for trusted brands, right? I think that's a really cool proposition, right? So I kind of want to just quickly share the couple of slides I create internally about where's our destination, what we need to get there. The things that are interesting here is, again, is try to compete, right? In security, this herd immunity concept, right? This sort of idea of hacking ourselves first, security governance, culture, all those are things that fundamentally underpin your kind of digital strategy, right? And your digital nervous system. And I really like the word ecosystem. I think that's a really one, and etc. So I kind of ask a good old ChatGPT, right, for a good analogy between digital, immune system and security, and it actually gave me some really cool stuff, right? You got the white blood cells, antibodies, complement systems, lymphatic systems, bone marrow, etc. And I kind of, there's a cool analogy, right? Security tools, security fixes, multi-layer security, secure systems, etc. Right? I really actually like this one, complement system, which is something that we don't sometimes talk about, which is the way we scale as a human. Our immune system is based on multiple layers, right? They actually sometimes are designed to fail. They're designed to be easier to hack, easier to compromise, because we actually need, if you think about it, our bodies need a healthy dose of virus to attack it, right? If you think that if only we had no virus attacking us, guess what? Your immune system gets really weak, right? So it's interesting that our bodies are designed on the idea, right? That you push things. Even our bodies, our muscles are designed on the idea to exercise, right? So I think that's a really cool concept, right? So to make this practical, I want to look at how we build it, right? So here are my sort of advice on how to build a digital immune system, right? So the first one is probably, if you want to take one thing out of this, right? Take this thing, which is use incidents as opportunities. And I still feel that most organizations, including some parts, all, the ones I work, right, we still don't do that, right? But in security, I really, we embrace that, and I'll go in more detail on that. But I think that is an amazing opportunity to really make a huge amount of changes for a lot of reasons. Risk acceptance at all levels, shared fate. Google actually came up with this, or they copied from somebody else, but I think it's really, really good, actually. I really like it. So it's not about shared responsibility, where I throw the fence over to you, and hey, I do my bit, and you do your bit, and if you screw up your bit, hey, it's your fault, right? I think in security, we've done a lot of that. I like the shared fate. I like the idea that in security, like if you build a system, it doesn't matter how secure it is, right? If the people using it, right, actually do lots of crazy insecure stuff, then it's your fault. Because the system was badly designed in the first place, right? You have to have systems that fail gracefully. So fair is really good. I think people has human sensors, super powerful. You need to have an engineering team, right? Or else you just consume stuff, you're not building things. We need healthy vendor relationships, known goods, great model, operating graphs and worldly maps, because I think that's super critical. And then threat models and leverage LLMs and AI capabilities. So let's expand on this, right? So this is probably the single thing that we do that makes a massive difference. So what I mean by this is, I mean that we take a P3 incident from a business point of view. So let's say there's some customer fraud, right? You get a customer calling you, hey, I have some fraud, happening, right? If you think about it, if the customer has to call you to tell a fraud happened, right? Or it could be the warehouse is not working, right? Or it could be that the website stopped working, or it could be that some data got leaked, etc. If that's the first time that you found that out, right? You can ask the question of, from a business point of view, what's the impact, right? And that gets, you can look at all sorts of metrics, and you can look at the cost, look at the stuff. The problem with that is that you're missing a lot of opportunities here, right? Because you could be a P3, it could be a P4, right? We have our scales, P1s is X million, P2s is X, whatever, right? But because, for me, you got it at the end, it's like saying, hey, we got somebody in the Coast Guard saying the town just been blown up, right, by a hurricane, right? And you go, okay, how many people died? Well, not that many, I guess it's not that. Or how many people died? None. Cool, nothing to see here, right? But the interesting question is, why did we see it coming, right? Why didn't we pick up the actual incident? So for me, it's a P1 because we missed the signals. That's why it's a P1, right? Because we didn't see it coming. We didn't plan for it. We had no playbooks. It was an event that we actually, did not have a good way to handle. And then by it running as a P1 versus, let's say, a P0 is 24/7. Nobody, every hands on deck, right, etc. P1 is the one where you put considerable amount of your team on it. So I'll put 70% of my team on a P1, on this P1. So that, think about what that means. It means that you're basically telling the teams, clean your schedule, right? That's what it means, right? You say, the stuff you want to do this week, just kick it to the curb, right? You're not going to do that. Or come to me and I'll make a decision, right? Whether you do it or not, we're going to be handling this incident. Now what it means that you now have a huge amount of horsepower to do things. So doing incidents, we fix and build things. We build connectors. We build playbooks. We do threat models. We actually review documents. We basically make relationships. We drive changes. We move changes in production, right? And we even try new technology and vendors, right? During the incident, right? Because what happens is your productivity level is so, insane because you have focus, because the business understands, the people react. So we had this incident where at the end of the day, we basically listed everything we did, right? We said, okay, guys, we managed to do it for 2 weeks. It was an incident, again, it was a P1 run as a P3. Let's list everything we've done. And you list it, right? And there were major things. We pushed this to production, we changed this, we fixed that. We found this out, we found who owned this, which again, is not a trivial question. Who actually owns this risk? Who owned that part of the customer? Who does this, etc. So it's a massive, big list. And then I asked the interesting question is, what didn't we do? Right? What is the side effect of that? Because, everybody cleared their schedule. And then we have a list of stuff, right? Immediately there was like a massive asymmetry where you go, okay, we didn't drop any major balls, right? It's not like, hey, we've done this, but actually we caused even more damage to the business, right? Because we didn't do this, all this stuff. And then the more interesting question was how long it would have taken us to do everything we've done in peacetime outside an incident. And the team was like 3 months, 6 months. And even more interestingly, we probably wouldn't have done it without burning a lot of bridges, because we would probably have to force some of those things to happen, where during that incident, for some, it's not a coincidence, of course, right? People really understood why that was needed, right? So I cannot stress how crazy powerful it is to run P3s as P1s, right? It's really hard because even the security teams don't like to do it because they still think it's taking them from their day jobs. The business goes, why are you doing that? This is not a P1, right? This is a P3, right? So there's a lot of work you need to do. But what's amazing is that you fix so many little things. You fix so many things that you take for granted that actually are really hard to do. Starting by, which channels you're going to use, where's the meeting rooms, where all this stuff, all the logistical stuff that when you have a real P1, you have hours to sort out. So what's cool about it is that you really practice it. If you know that analogy of security is like a contact sport, this is practicing. You're practicing. So I don't need to run a tabletop exercise for what happens on a P1. I've already done it. I already figure out how to brief the execs, how to all those things that you might want to do as a P3. P1, we do it regularly. So this is super powerful. And the other one that's very interesting is it's the opportunity to introduce new technology and vendors. Because by definition, something failed. Right? By definition, there's an opportunity, there's a gap there because the existing technology, the existing vendors, the existing workflows wasn't working, right? So again, instead of having the loops of the cycles to introduce, I think, using these incidents, if the team on the other side is set up like this, it's a great opportunity to integrate that. Now, risk acceptance is, for me, at the epicenter of everything we do, right? And the trick here is to have risks as graphs, hyperlinked risks. So I always like to think of the risk as the 5 whys. In fact, I like to think as there's a fact, something happens. A vulnerability is a fact that has security implications, right? So you could say, this happens, but actually, this thing is not patched, or this is happening, or this is go. But if it has security implications, it becomes a vulnerability. So for me, vulnerability should be fact, should be proven something is happening. Then you ask, why does it matter? Right? And then you get a first why. And if you keep asking why, if you take any vulnerability and you ask 5 whys or 7, whatever, how far you want to go, you will hit on the business metrics. And that's the sweet spot. So in a way, our risk register is at the end of the whys of the risks that we have. Right? And that's super powerful because it means that when we say, hey, we have a risk for this, we can then go down the tree and say, well, because of that, because of this, because of that. And then you need granularity because you can't say, hey, we have a problem with patching or we have a problem with compliance. You can't say that across the business. You can say, this team, for those assets, have a problem with compliance. Actually, that team doesn't, right? So then you start to understand again the implications of it. And the key here is really to connect them to stakeholders because the risks should be connected to the project and the budget. Think about it. Like, why do you do something, right? Why do you do a project? You do a project because you want to reduce some risks. Do you know what risks are? Do you know what needle you're moving in your business when you do those risks, right? So when you do that project, and this is really hard because in a way, it should be connected to the budget. In fact, it should be connected to the stakeholders that should be funding that. So, we're trying to get to a mode where most of our projects are not funded from security or funded from IT or funded from the crew and org chart. They should be funded by the business units that care about that. And by definition, why do they care? Because we give them the risk. And how we give them the risk? We make them accept the risk. And this is the trick, right? I think assigning owners is good, right? We were talking about that. But accepting it takes to another level. Because once you give a risk for somebody to accept is the first time they actually really read what's in there with proper cognitive attention, right? Up until then, it's like diagonal read, yeah, it kind of feels okay. You make somebody accept the risk, they really read it, right? And they really challenge it. They go, oh, this is not to me, it's my boss, or it's that person over there. And then it's about finding the right altitude. So that's the first one. The second element is every risk has to be accepted. The only question is for how long? Right? So if you're not going to do anything about something, you accept the risk for 12 months. Because guess what? In 12 months, we're still going to be here, right? If you feel that we want to review something might change, it's 6 months. If you have a project that's doing something about it, you can risk accept for a month or 2. But that's already depending on, is there a project? Because you could say, I'm not comfortable with this risk. And I go, cool, where is the project? Where is the sprint that is going to do something about that? Because if that doesn't exist, then it doesn't matter. The risk will still be here 2 months down the line. So if you say, I'm not comfortable, I want the risk to be accepted by a week, cool, where's the task force that is working right now on that risk, right? So again, what's cool about it is it forces a level of understanding that, it's like, I think the guy before was mentioning, like sometimes there's a very different level of risk acceptance and appetite in the business at different levels. This is calling their bluff, saying, hey, if you really care about that, then you have to do this. I don't mind, it's okay for you to say, I don't accept this risk, so I don't like this risk. But I'm going, yeah, but your business is not walking the walk, right? So you're going to have to accept it because your business is not doing it, right? And it's super powerful. And at this level, you can be more formal or less formal, but there has to be a physical action. It could be an emoji, right, on Slack. It could be a button on risk. It could be an email. It could be a more formal thing. Of course, the more formal stuff, you need to maybe make it be more formal. It could be a meeting. It could be a signature. But there has to be a formal, physical action of going, yes. Because that's the moment that, in fact, is before they click is when they read. So take into account that that's not when they're going to accept it. Is when you ask them to accept, then they're going to pay attention. So probably a week or 2 weeks later, that's when you get the stuff. But that's fundamentally, and that underpins everything we do, right? I talk about shared fate. I think it's a really cool idea, and I think it's definitely a way to put things together. I really have a massive problem when we talk about the people are the problem, right? I have a massive issue when we say 70% of issues caused by people. Is actually no, 70% of was caused by systems that were so badly designed that the human operators actually 99% of the time manage to do the right thing, and then 1% of the time something else happens, right? That's the reality. So it's on us to design systems that fail gracefully, right? And that's why if you look at the immune system, the digital system is designed for failure. It's designed to fail gracefully. It's designed to allow things to go wrong, right? So that then you react to it. So I think it's very important that what we should be doing is using our people as human sensors, right? You should be encouraging them to report stuff. You should be encouraging them, in fact, to do dangerous stuff, right? In some ways, right? Because you want to capture it, right? I tell my whole company to hack us, right? I said, my problem is not that somebody did something. My problem is that we didn't pick it up over there, right? And by the way, the business bricks itself every day, right? The biggest, cause of incidents in the business is the business itself, right? Pushing wrong things, like everybody, I'm sure, have experiences of that, right? Use that because there should be opportunities, right? And just on the people thing, diversity is actually a business value, right? You want to have diverse teams because it actually makes better teams. And the thing I really need to work better in our industry is skills transfer, is bring people from other industries into cybersecurity, right? I think we need to create opportunities for that. It's not, and actually the good news is that we have such a premium in our industry now that, you say a good engineer today is 50, 70, 80, a kind of a more experienced 100K. Bloody hell, man, you go to other industries, you can hire really, really good people for 50K, right? Like people that have way more experience than half your team together, right? You hire, an NHS, person that worked in the emergency room, they know how to handle pressure, right? You hire somebody who runs stores, they know logistics, right? There's a lot of great sources of talent that we should be getting, right? We just need to make it easy and measure that, right? I cannot underestimate how powerful this is, right? You have to have an engineering team in your team, right? And what that means is you have to have developers. And I don't buy that you don't have budget. You're always going to have a budget. You tell me you can't squeeze 50K, 60K, 70K out of your budget, and guess what? With 50K, 70K, you can hire 2 developers, right? In fact, we have a job opening now, which is literally, this is the name of the job opening, right? It's called Python Engineer Automation Developer, right? No, Python Engineer Automation, right? To become cloud security expert. Literally, that is the job title, right? And what we're basically saying is that we want to hire developers, somebody who knows how to code, somebody who understands development principles, and we're going to make them a cloud security engineer, right? And that is totally possible. I've done it, right? It's really powerful, right? But again, that allows you to hire somebody that if you want to try to hire a cloud security expert today, it's like 50 to 100 grand, right? In some places, right? With experience. But I guarantee the people we're hiring, they will be as good as that within 6 to 12 months, right? And also they have development experience, so they scale even more. So again, build that team because you wanna be building up. We really need healthy vendor partnerships and we need value-driven relationships and pay-per-use. And now I connect this with the incidents, right? The opportunity for engage with a lot of vendors is when you have an incident, because by definition there's gaps in there. I still feel that most vendors want, and I know what they want, again, my vendor hat, I know why there's a driven to yearly contracts, all the annual, recurring revenue, all that stuff. But that doesn't work very well for a lot of us, right? We really want relationships that are driven. I want my team to view the vendors as an extension of them, And I feel that that is very rare. And I think that's an opportunity for the up and coming, right? To be that player. And again, if you create the incidents like I was describing, there's an opportunity to try those vendors out. There's an opportunity to say, hey, this doesn't work, so hey, let me try here because we're stuck, right? And that's a good opportunity. Known good, it's a really great pattern, which is you go into a good state. So instead of looking for bad stuff, you create environments that reward good environments. And this, you can apply this to all sorts of things, from configurations to development environments. You know, glass wall, that's what we do with the files. But it's about understanding that if you, again, create environments that reward and promote good behavior, then, you know, you have much more understanding of what it looks like, and then the bad stuff becomes outliers. So they become much easier to detect, right? So again, it's super crazy powerful pattern. Now, it couldn't be one of my presentations without talking about graphs, right, and maps, right? So I'm a big fan of using Jira as a graph database, right? And our Jira is a gigantic graph. So I can connect a project to a risk, to a vulnerability, to an owner, to a team, to a person, to the whole lot, and we can navigate it. Because relationships are complicated, and that gives you context. And then some things you get from other systems, some things you go from mana.com, some things you get from AWS. Again, you have engineering teams, so you can build integrations. But you need a graph. You need to understand who is doing what. And even that simple question is really hard to answer without a graph. Again, risks, the way I was describing, if you don't have the risk in the graph, forget it. You just have a bunch of spreadsheets, right? Which, by the way, spreadsheet is a graph. It's just a couple of nodes deep, right? And then you should be looking at worldly maps, right? So this is a worldly map. If you haven't seen this, let me just give you a very great example of the power of worldly maps, right? Worldly maps is a map where you basically have genesis, things that are a new custom build, you know, things at the beginning, you productize, and then you have the commodity. So this is one that's people have been working on this for cybersecurity. What's really cool about this, and you can see like this leads to that, leads to this. So you have the risk appetite, compliance, and P&L for the executives. So you got some risk identification, assets, incident response, monitoring, SOC tools, and you can see the level of maturity. What is really cool about this is that 6 months ago, that LLM's little maturity was down here, right? Was roughly over there, right? Which basically means that the security LLMs were again down there. What has happened since ChatGPT came along is ChatGPT just about productize dramatically, almost commoditize the use of LLMs. And what's already starting to do is enabling the pyramid of security large language models. And they will change all of this dramatically, right? Until this emerged, I couldn't really see how a lot of the stuff we're doing will scale. Even the risk, right? I need to create risk narratives for 50 to 100 executives. It's impossible to do without an LLM. With an LLM, I can go, hey, describe me these risks for my CFO, describe me these risks for my CEO, describe me this risk for that engineer, describe me this risk for the guy who's actually going to do it, right? Suddenly it scales dramatically. So what's interesting when you look at the tools on this space is that whether they're investing on here or they're going to invest in what they do and then depend on the evolution of that. So again, this is the power of a worldly map, allows to visualize it much more effectively. And you should be mapping your strategy onto this. And so I think in maps because it really allows you to understand, you know, what you buy, what you build, where you are in maturity, how everything evolves. And there's some cool examples of do some stuff. And Go is there. He's done a lot of worldly maps, right? So again, you can talk to him, right, on that kind of stuff. Finally, threat modeling. By the way, threat modeling during incidents, the best time to do it. DPIA is an incident, best time to do it because there's no theoretical questions. This just happened, right? It's not like this could happen. What about, no, this just happened, right? Now what, right? So again, they're super powerful. And again, leverage LLMs and AI capabilities, right? I know there's the hype, right? I know there's the whole thing about ChatGPT, etc. But it's probably the single biggest paradigm shift I see happening in our industry for a long time. Most of the stuff I've seen, I've been here for a while, right, is evolutionary. This is going to change dramatically. The question is, and when you look at this, the question is which of these vendors, right, or which of these technologies, right, are going to start leveraging that, right? But it's crazy powerful, right? There's lots of problems that in the past I couldn't see how we scale, and now you just have to understand that. The way the evolution works is that you could say, well, the LLMs at the moment are generic, they have an opinion, they do all that kind of stuff. Fine, that means that some of them are still custom built. They will move, right? One of the beauties of a map is that we don't know who wins here, right? It could have been, in fact, we don't even know which one's going to win now. It could be ChatGPT, could be Microsoft, Meta just released one, could be Google, could be Amazon, who still has to come into this space, could be Alibaba. There's lots of players, right? That they can take it to the next level. But what we know is that this is going to move, right? Because we know that this depends on that or goes directly here, and that moves it, right? So you can imagine the power of SOC tools once they're embedded. You can imagine the power of your risk management, your patch management. Suddenly we have context. Why do I patch this, not that one? Why do I change this, not change that one? What is the single biggest point of impact I can have in a business, right? These questions in the past were really hard to do. Imagine a world where you can feed. You can imagine a model that has GDPR. It has ISO 27000. It has the latest standards, right? It has your company profile. It has your data from AWS. It has your risk mappings. It has signals. And then you can ask really good questions. What do I do with this? What's my compliance level, right? Etc. I'm already asking questions to ChatGPT to say, hey, can you map this to ISO 27000? Can you map this to GDPR? Can you map this, which NIST controls are related to this particular risk? And it gives you, right? Bang, 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 bang. It doesn't mean it's going to be correct 100 times, but it saves you so much time, right? At that level. So yeah, so this is going to change a lot in our industry. And I think it's a great opportunity because remember that we as an industry, just final thought, we have one big competitive advantage against everybody else. We are the only team in the whole company that can speak and get data from everybody. There's no other team. I challenge you to find a team that has the depth and the breadth that we have. We can get data from the CEO to the tiny bit of logging information that happens and everything in the middle, right? We just have to ask. We just have to basically, have a business reason to do that. We should be acting as massive signals for the business, and we should be driving the business transformation on fact-driven. And I think now with this, we can really expand not just our reach in security, which I go back to, for me, at Holland and Barrett, we are driving the trust in the business. So I'm putting trust at the epicenter of what we do, and you can't have trust without really good cybersecurity, right? And everything else that comes with it. And that's my final point.
Awesome. Well done.